Everything rises and falls on leadership. The ability to lead well is fueled by living your cause and purpose. This podcast will equip you with the tools to do just that. Live and lead with cause and purpose. And now, author of the book, The Anatomy of Leadership, and our host, Chris Como.
Hello and welcome to The Anatomy of Leadership. I am super excited today. Our guest is Quint Studer. He is the founder of Healthcare Plus Solutions Group. He's also a lifelong student. I love that, Quint. A lifelong student and teacher of leadership. He's the author of many books and serves on numerous healthcare boards. He's a frequent speaker, and one hell of a speaker, I might add. Workshop facilitator, and he's a mentor to individuals and organizations. In 2021, he released The Calling, Why Healthcare is So Special. His new book, Rewiring Excellence, Hardwired to Rewire, provides tools, techniques that are doable to help employees and physicians experience joy in their work. And then most recently, or coming out actually in March, I believe, The Human Margin, Building the Foundations of Trust. And that's written in partnership with Katherine Meese, PhD. And again, I think that's actually done in partnership with Health Administration Press, or HCHE. And then recently, Quint founded the Healthcare Plus Solutions Group along with longtime colleague and friend Dan Collard. They specialize in helping healthcare organizations to diagnose and treat their most urgent pain points in order to achieve and sustain results. It's so good to have you, Quint. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And congratulations on the book. I mean, these are hard. I mean, books are hard. To have a baby is 9 months, and a book is usually much longer, like than 9 months. It's like an elephant birth, which lasts for a long time. And I think to talk, writing's so much harder than talking because you have to be so much more precise and you don't want to hurt feelings. So congratulations on your book. And I've read it and I love it and I'm enjoying it. And I think you did so many smart things that I need to do on my books.
Well, thank you, Quint. That means the world coming from you. Before we jump in, because I will use my book to kind of just set the table, but Quint, anything I left out that you just want people to know about you?
Well, I think we have a great website, www.healthcareplussg.com. And I say that because we have so much free stuff on it. We have lots of things on well-being and mental health that's free. We have lots of research on care models and studies and what people are looking for. Most of our stuff is very inexpensive. I never want dollars to get in the way of people having better work life. So I think that's something that if they haven't been there, that they might find it helpful and interesting. That's
perfect, Quint. Well, Quint, one story I was going to tell about you, there's so many I can tell. I was I think I was about 25, 26 working for Covenant when you came to town in Baptist Healthcare. And I had this passion about leadership. My wife had given me my first John Maxwell book. And here you came into town and transforming Baptist healthcare. And I was actually working on my MBA. And so I wrote a paper about the need for healthcare, development of healthcare leadership. And I actually sent it to you and said, I'd love to work with you one day. And that was that was 1990, I don't know, maybe 98, somewhere in that ballpark. And then lo and behold, the privilege of my life working for you from 2006 to 2008. So I have no idea if you ever got that paper, but I sent it to your office.
I put my whole life on that paper. It's my blueprint.
Well, Quint, I appreciate you giving me a shout out for my book. And so when I wrote the book, one reason why I wrote it is, as you know, if you Google the word leadership, you'll get like 7 billion hits. And I felt like I was frustrating people because people would say, Chris, you're always reading leadership books. Where should I start? And I give them 5 books and I just see the frustration. And I thought, okay, so really kind of wrote this to be like a meta framework of leadership. Not that it's the know-all, end-all, almost like a table of contents of sorts. So with this show, I'm wanting to bring amazing guests like yourself because the idea is I went 10 miles wide, maybe 2 inches deep. But to bring experts like yourself who have spent your whole life building, developing leaders. In fact, in the book, I called you the Nick Saban of healthcare leaders. I hope you took that the way it's intended because I think it's true.
I think it's wonderful.
So caring for others is kind of the second chapter, and I thought, who better than you? Because I feel like when I worked for you, I will say it's one of the most intense, hard work, but I learned more. And so I feel like you just do this so well. So first off, how do you define caring for others? What would be your definition?
I think loving them. I think love is really an important topic that, over the last couple of years, I've been bringing it up quite a bit, because just think about who we love. Probably the people we love the most are our children. Yet, if you look at that, I don't think every child says, isn't it great my parents are spending so much time maximizing my human potential? I think coaches, you talk about your 6th grade experience. I think it's just the innate sense that you care about someone, and I think, though, you have to frame it sometimes. And, framing it, I'm not afraid to say to somebody, you told me you wanted feedback. You told me you wanted to be the best. Is it okay to give you some feedback right now? A lot of times, Chris, I use the spinach in their teeth that I learned from Beth Keene. If you care about somebody, you'll tell them that they have spinach in your teeth. I'm probably the sloppiest brusher of teeth in the history of the world. And I will tell you that almost every time I leave the house, my wife will say, you have some toothpaste on the side of your face or lip. It scares me when I'm in a hotel. I've got to always double check. So I think it's letting people know you care about them, but letting people also know that you have great belief in their potential. I tell people, I'm investing in you because you're worth investing in, because you have tremendous opportunity here to really maximize yourself, but also help others. So I think it has to come, not everyone can accept that, but it's got to come from the fact that, I care about you. I mean, I've let people, I let a person go in time, and we still went on our cruise together. And it just was a situation where it gotten to the point where we needed to elevate to another level. But even departures, not everyone, but even departures can be made out of love sometimes.
Well, it's funny you say that, Quint. We were together at Best Places to Work 2 years ago, and there's a mutual friend of both you and I, and unfortunately I had to terminate her earlier in her young career. And she is now an amazing human being, and I did not know what she was dealing with during the time. And lo and behold, apparently that termination was a catalyst for her changing her life and now just doing amazing things. And apparently she shared it with you that night, and you said, you should go tell them that. That was the gift, because quite often those terminations just, like you, they break my heart, because you see the potential in that person. And so to get the gift of someone to come back and say, I don't think you know this, and then to see kind of what their life is like now, that was just such a gift. I don't know, have you ever had a circumstance like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was at Baptist Hospital, one of the departments wasn't performing well. And, I brought the leader in, and I said, there's another job in this organization that I actually can't promise it, but I think if you applied, you'd be a pretty good fit. But I want to tell you that now, because if somebody else will get that probably in the next 30 days. And I think if you apply now, you'd have a good chance. Now, you don't have to apply. You can stay where you're at. But let's talk about the performance we're going to need from you in the next 90 to 120 days in order to stay in your position. Now, if you think you can do that, it's up to you. But I just would hate to have you not get this opportunity, have this other thing not work out. But it's up to you. Well, she applied for that job and she got it, but she was so angry with me. I mean, you could tell even in the hallways, you could just feel it. And a year later, she wrote me a marvelous note thanking me for helping her make that decision. So again, it doesn't mean right away. I mean, it doesn't mean immediate, but that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it, first of all, to help our organization. And I think that's the thing. You got to say, what am I most loyal to? So Chris, this is one of my examples, particularly we're a helping profession. So even our non-clinicians are still DNA to help, but the clinicians are really DNA to help. They're here to manage pain. They're here to all these things. So I think it's really hard. So they tend to be very, very loyal to their workforce, which is nice. That is good. But it's not good if they're more loyal to their workforce than they are their patients or their family members. And I can almost tell a good leader, because I say if they're loyal first to their workforce, second to the patient, they won't make the tough decision on the workforce. If they're loyal to the patient, they'll make the tough decision. So even though we're talking about caring, I think when people are performing well in their gut, they sort of know it. So I think caring is just really helping people know that we're not doing this to be mean. We're not doing it with anything, but we've got to make sure this works. So we owe it to our mission of our organization to be the best we can be. And but you also, Chris, as you do, you've got to commit to investing in people. The number one way, one of the key ways to tell people you care about them is to invest in them. And I think in healthcare, we've been notoriously wrong in thinking that training and development is an expense, not an investment. And where you have always been a shining example from the time you were 25 years old is you saw development as an investment. Where it's sad, but I can name lots of executives who I think are shortchanging their organization because they think they just don't have the money to invest in skill building. Well, then they don't get the metrics they want. And that's true in acute. It's certainly true in post-acute.
Well, there's so much there, Quint. One thing that, so you and you've heard me talk about Dr. Thayer. Certainly you saw me talk about it in the book as well, just having the privilege of having you and he as mentors. And one of the things that Thayer would talk about, he would say the mission of the organization, and he would, those of us on video, he would do his hands like this. It was mother. And I used to like, what does he mean by that? But it's interesting. I had something happen in our own organization. Our mission is care as it should be. And I started to see our employees started interpreting caring for each other as a value. But they were taking the mission and they were co-opting it for that. And it created this great conversation of, we first are here to serve mother, the mission, and it starts there. And then we have the creative tension then to have great relationships and challenge one another and truly care for one another. But it is in that kind of order. And so I remember, again, that wonderful lesson of calling it mother, but I feel like that's what you're describing. Like, you know, if we get it wrong and it's just about each other, like I care for my staff and I'm protecting them, and we forget that we're here to serve the patient, which is the mission, you get it kind of out of whack. Would you agree with that, or would you say it differently?
No, I'd say it exactly right. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just saying if I can help the person be the best they can be, we'll meet the mission. But that means, you know, you can sort of tell organizations that are unhealthy. They'll say stuff like, well, they got my back. Well, why does somebody need to have your back?
Yep.
You know, they gossip. They just do certain things. Gee, Chris, I need to tell you something, but I can't tell you who told me. You know, I think we have middle school culture sometimes in healthcare. Yep. And I think when we talk, but I just go back to caring, in the fact that it's also a whole bunch of things. You know, I told you that today was a rough day because I was going out for lunch, and one of our employees came in, saw me in the parking lot and started crying, and I hugged her, and she told me that she'd been up all night. That's why she hadn't come to work yet this morning, because her husband told her this week, actually yesterday, that the marriage wasn't working and he was divorcing her. Well, you know, everything changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we went back in and we've got her set up for a therapist at 4. I made sure right now while we're talking, somebody's with her. And I didn't do anything but sit there for almost 2 hours and just listen as she cried. I think we send birthday cards to our employees' children with $25. Now that might not seem a lot, but the fact that, well, you care about my kids, or you care about this, or you make sure you go to funerals, you make sure you go to wakes, you make sure that people know this is I want a relationship beyond work. So even if work ends, we can still have a relationship, because it's all about building, you know, it's not, I think healthcare's fallen into the trap, and that we're seeing it more and more. You know, every time I read something, we got this new robot, we got this new this, and I understand all that is good. But, you know, we have to be careful we don't take what is a relationship field and make it a transactional field.
Yeah, that's well said, Quint. In fact, you're such a beautiful modeling of what you said. My kids will still remember when we worked together at Studer Group and you actually did something along those lines. And my kid knew who Mr. Quint was. And to this day, they kind of hold you in great reverence because you know, just you were a great person in my life. And, you know, my kids, a couple of my kids actually talk about, we live in North Carolina now, wouldn't it be great to go back to Pensacola? And you're one of the reasons why they would actually say that.
That happened today. There's a woman I know, and she got out of the military, and she was having a real rough time adjusting. And I mentioned to her that there's this program that she could become certified to teach. So I got to know her. Well, she just texted me a little while ago and said her son has to go to the Sacred Heart here on a regular basis to the nephrology unit. And he's walking by, my picture's there. And I don't know exactly why it's there, but my picture's there. And he looked up and said, I know him. And she, and so her son, Noel was very excited that he knew this guy personally whose picture's up on a wall in the hospital. And it just made him feel better.
That's well said. Well, Quint, let me ask you a tough question along this that I bet you as leaders think about. So what if they're in the tough situation where, like maybe with this situation you just described, but then also because that employee is involved in that personal situation and the results are starting to slide? When do you bring that creative tension of accountability versus giving grace? And I even shouldn't put it juxtaposition, but I think leaders struggle. Like, when do I love and when do I hold them accountable?
Well, if you notice what I said, at 4 o'clock, I have her into therapy. And I think if you go on our website and look at well-being, we don't do that well. And we sort of say, gee, that's too bad, and we wouldn't do that. So I think we as a leader have to make sure we tell people about all the resources they have. I think there are times when you do give a little bit of a understanding. I mean, people are human beings, and I think most people get that. I told the story to somebody yesterday when I was working up in Wisconsin. We had a nurse manager who was going through a very difficult time. And you know what? For about a month, she wasn't as good as she could be. And we knew that. We told her that. We said, just do the best you can. Do the best you can. And I tell people, she more than made up for it. So you have to decide, is this a short-term thing that we're going to help her get through, an empathy thing, a caring thing, and in the long run, we'll work this out? Or is it something like, we told you not to come in late and you came in late again? Mm-hmm. And then that's where you have to clarify expectations. But I also think, Chris, only 1% of people in healthcare ever utilize the services that are offered in well-being.
Yep.
Because we don't play offense.
Yep.
So I mean, I literally called the therapist myself, said, we have a situation here, I need you to see somebody. She said, I can see him at 4. I now got the address, the phone numbers, the whole bit. So I just think we need to be more assertive if we care about someone, making sure that they get the help that they need.
Thank you to our Anatomy of Leadership sponsor, Delta Care RX. Delta Care RX is also the title sponsor for our April and November 2024 Leadership Immersion courses. Delta Care RX is primarily known as a national hospice PBM and prescription mail order company. Delta Care RX is a premier vendor of TCN and provides not only pharmaceutical care, but also niche software innovations that save their customers time, stress, and money. Thank you, Delta Care RX, for all the great work that you do in end-of-life and serious illness care.
Let me ask you another tough question, Quint, and I'll frame it this way. You and I were talking about Nick Saban before we even started, and again, I really do feel like you're the Nick Saban of healthcare leaders. I don't know if you ever saw, Nick Saban was on this great interview. It was a 60-minute interview, and you could tell the interviewer just didn't get what high performance was about. He would just want to make Saban be out just a tough guy. Like, you're just really tough on people. And there's this one scene, I think it was the Sugar Bowl, I forget what year, it was A.J. McCarron in the center. And they got in kind of a shoving match, and Alabama was way far ahead. And the interviewer asked Saban, he said, "What was that about?" And then Saban kind of laughed and he said, "They were still trying to get it right." And you could just tell the interviewer didn't get it. And I thought, that was such a beautiful leadership lesson. What he's saying is, these guys, the love of the game and the level of high performance, yeah, the score was blown away, but they were about the mastery and the performance, and they were still trying to get it right. Yes, it got intense. He wasn't condoning them kind of pushing and shoving. So here's my question to you. There's a time I remember you and I were walking between buildings, and I could tell you were thinking about something else, but all of a sudden we found each other walking next to each other. And you just looked at me and you asked me a really tough question. And it was about a part of our process that was kind of half-baked. And lo and behold, I just felt like you put that question on me, like, go figure that out. And I went figure that out. And it actually has become part of something, a tool that I still use to this day about how you do goal setting with organizations. And so I wonder for you, like, are you always working on the problem and trying to get to the goal, or caring for the person, or is it just so mixed mash in your mind that it's just all working well together? Like, is it about the outcome or about the person?
Well, I think I sort of wiggle with that one sometimes, because I think I'm an outcome-oriented person, but sometimes you've got to perfect the process to get the outcome. So I know that sounds crazy because I'm very outcome-oriented, but you've got to perfect the process. And if you don't perfect the process, you're not going to get the outcome you want. And I think, we all love this, set here big, hairy, audacious goals. Well, I'm assuming people want to hit them. So if people aren't hitting them, we have to figure out why. And so I very much am digging more and more into clarity. I believe so much of failure is just a complete lack of clarity. What does right look like? What are my clear expectations? I spoke at George Washington University's master's program 2 weeks ago, and one of the questions was, as I'm going into my administrative residency, what advice do you have? And I said, I would ask your residency, the person you're going to work for, tell them that you want to be the best administrative resident they've ever had. And 1 year from now, and describe exactly what you will accomplish to be the best administrative resident they've ever had. And then I said, and then if you would, share with them when they think about residents they've had in the past, which ones have really stood out as being excellent, not with names and what have they done. And also share a resident, or not again name, but just in general, that you felt didn't maximize this potential. I said, it's always about clarity. What does right look like? For me to accomplish this goal, what's it going to be? And I think it was, afterwards, I get emails from the students. And two things they resonated with the most. And they were both sort of equal. One was clarity, that they used to go in and sort of, guess what the resident director's looking for, sort of feel they need it. They never knew they could be so courageous to ask for clarity. And I think everyone should do that. Number two is this concept I've been using quite a bit, Chris, with people subconsciously to ask them, are they a got to, have to person or a get to person? And I fall in the trap of I got to do this, I have to do this, I got to do this. And that becomes a self-pity victimization brain. But if I say I get to do this, it just changes everything. So again, we're lucky to be in a profession, and and I think there is confusion, and it's in your book so well. I think the fact that you had guts enough to say caring does not mean coddling, caring does not mean don't upset them, caring does not mean make them happy, caring does not mean pat them on the back, caring does not mean just be nice to them. And I think in healthcare, people confuse those things with caring. I think that can be a component of caring, but I think you can still care and still not coddle people. I think you can still care and create some discomfort in people. You said it earlier, creative tension. I can't make everyone happy. That's, again, I couldn't say it to this lady whose husband said I'm divorcing her, but he kept saying to her things that, you made me do this. And no, nobody makes you do this. You made me be happy. No, I can't make you unhappy or happy. You have to take your own ownership. And I'm all for pats on the back, but I think we do too much glad-handing in healthcare. Everybody does a nice job. We were working with an organization recently, Chris, that I think we really pressed them to make a change at the top because they weren't getting results. And as long as this underperformer was sitting there, everyone else felt that I could be successful if I just did better than this person.
Wow.
Now, that's not caring about everybody else in the organization.
Yep.
So you are thinking you're caring for one person, but you're not caring for the rest of the organization, which is confused on why you say we're high performers and you say we're excellent, but why are you accepting less than that?
Yep. Quint, I'm curious, you just have such a skill of seeing talent in people. What is it you look for where you're like, that person is worthy of my caring? What do you look for?
They're not overly sensitive. And I think one thing that gets in the way of people, particularly in healthcare, is they're overly sensitive. And then people play that game. Well, you hurt their feelings. I didn't hurt their feelings. They hurt their own feelings, Yeah, I mean, you get up, if you're going to have conversation, you're going to say, hey, we're underperforming in this area. I said, we're underperforming in this area. People say, wow, she really felt bad. I can't control that. She felt bad. I didn't want her to feel bad, but it'd be a lot better if we had better results. And now what can I do to help you get those results? What barriers can I remove? So I think, and you talked about it great in your book, chapter 1, excuse me, you started perfect with mastery. I call it self-awareness. So if you don't have self-awareness, that's the open the airway to development. It's like open the airway to CPR, because you don't know. And we have people, that just aren't aware. They're just like no lights, nobody's home at times. They're getting terrible results, but they think they're doing a good job. Or one of my columns, one of the employees really reacted because he thought I was talking about him. Come on now, you're not that important. And it's, I think you got to take feedback.
Yeah.
And I just remember talking to a lady one time with a worked for us at Studer Group. She wanted to develop. And I said, but nobody's going to give you feedback. She said, well, I want feedback. I said, I don't really think you do, because even I hardly know you, but when I give you just a little bit of correction, you look so devastated. So if you look devastated and if you look like you can't handle it, you're not going to get it. So I think the ability to get tough feedback and not let it take it so personally, but just take it. And you look again, high performers take feedback. High performers look for feedback. High performers are looking on how they can be better. So I think the number one thing I look for when I develop people, do they really want to be developed? Because if they do, they're going to have to get tough feedback. And people, in general, a lot of people say they want to be developed, but I don't think they really do. And most people that work for me that do really well with me have pretty thick skin.
Yeah, that's actually well said. And I will be very transparent. That was not me when I started with you, but I do think over the course of time I did develop in that. And then I think you really started that process for me, and it's only continued. It's funny, I was actually just thinking of some Quint as you were talking about, and I had an employee for a long time, and I use this metaphor, like they say, do you have feedback for me? But I felt like when they were saying that, it was almost someone putting their thumb on the desk, like they're about ready to get hit with a hammer. Like the words were saying they wanted the feedback, but everything, the energy was, I'm not really open to it and I can't receive it. And my heart would break because you could just tell that it was stultifying their ability to absorb and grow and learn, and just saw so much talent there. But that talent not being realized, because you could almost tell there was an inward struggle that they really weren't ready at a place where they could even receive that feedback, even though the words are saying, give me some feedback.
Yeah, and I always try to tell people with feedback, I always say, you shared with me you want to really be the best, and I'm with you. So I'm going to need to give you some feedback at times. And I'd like to give you some feedback now. Are you ready for it? And usually it's not bad. And, I try to close it off. This isn't a performance this isn't like a warning or verbal warning. I try to always close it off with, thank you so much, because the reason I'm saying this is because I know you really want to be the best, and I'm committed to helping you be there.
That's awesome, Quint. Well, Quint, I wanted you to have a little bit of time to talk about your new book. So The Human Margin, Building the Foundations of Trust. And I think it's coming out soon. What is that about?
Well, it was about research. I was speaking at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and Dan Gentry, who's head of AUPHA, who does programs for, people that teach healthcare administration, said, you got to meet Dr. Meese. So I went and met Dr. Meese because I happened to be up there. And she's a researcher into well-being, employee well-being. And she started sharing a ton of research with me. And the research was quite wild. And it had such an impact on me. I changed. The statement, people don't leave their job, they leave their boss. Mm-hmm. And middle managers are devastated by that. But you know what? Today, people don't leave their middle managers. Actually, COVID has gotten them happier with their middle manager because that was their lifeline. So what the research showed very quickly is due to COVID, lack of visibility, canceling training, all these things, the confidence in senior leadership being open and transparent is an all-time low. So number 2, does my organizational support me? Number 3, do the organization care about my well-being? Number 4, do I feel I'm being recognized? Number 5, do I get that sense of belonging? Liking their boss is way down there now, their middle manager. And so when we get into that, we say, well, it's great to say, hey guys, we got a trust issue. Trust is takes years to build and like 3 days or 2 minutes to destroy. And so we wrote a book, and I've always liked, whenever I speak, people say, do you have any research for that? And I'll grab some research somewhere. And if you're a researcher, come on, we're smart. After like the third time of telling me people are burnt out, okay, I get it, but what do you do about it? So I think we really tried to balance a book that showed the research component, why people have lost trust in senior leadership, with solutions on how to build it back. Why people feel that they don't belong. Because, again, one of the challenges in healthcare is there's so many new people. Sometimes we'll go to an organization, Chris, and 50% of the workforce has been there 3 years or less. So you don't have that trust that's, when do we trust someone? Chris, you can get up and you do a great job and you can tell everyone that you're a trusting organization, but that middle manager is going to want to hear it. The other peer middle manager telling him you can trust this guy is going to go farther than you telling him you're trustworthy. And on top of it, you can tell the employees they can trust. But who really makes a difference is that employee that's working shoulder to shoulder with them that says, yeah, this is a good place to be. You can trust these people. And that's what we've got to rebuild back up because of this newness. And for your listeners and viewers to ponder, let me walk through. We know that the biggest time you lose people is early on. Also, the number one reason people stay in a job, Chris, if you look at any employee engagement survey, it's not, I love my boss. That's nice. It's, I like my coworkers. Okay, so let's talk about the disconnect here. If you're new, how long does it take you to really feel connected to your coworkers? It ain't 1 week or 2 weeks. It might be 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Yet, when do people leave? They leave because they don't know their coworkers. So I think we have to completely reinvent how we introduce people into an organization. It can't just be, here's your buddy, here's your peer. We have to just throw our arms around this new employee and immerse them in our culture so they get those connections with their coworkers way earlier. I think that's a game changer in healthcare.
Man, and that's incredible, Quint, because that to me expands even my understanding of caring for others. It is probably a little bit more the intention of from one to one, but it really is the whole culture in the organization. How does it tell people we care for you? And people will vote with their feet based upon how they think the organization as a whole. And there's so much involved in that. Are there any other just practical tactics that you're bumping into that will help in that time period?
Sure. Give you just a list, and I love how your book always gives lists and questions and ponder. Number one, as soon as people's going through the interview process, you onboard them from day one. You have the employees they're going to work with, make videos telling them they can't wait to see them in 2 weeks. They're thrilled to be working with them. The manager makes sure that they stay in touch. Hey, here's where you park. I'll meet you first day, everything we can. The other thing I think right off the bat is when you bring the new person in, you surround them with who they're going to be working with. And then every person they're going to work with shares how they felt their first day, how they felt their first couple days. Because see, this new person is watching this nurse or CNA say, I'll never be that good. I'll never be able to do that. Because they're comparing their inexperience with experience. And also the experienced person might make it look so easy, they're deflating that person feeling I can never get it. You will see a whole room shift when everyone goes around the room and said, here's how I felt my first day or first couple days. All of a sudden those experienced people's empathy gets so much deeper because now they relate to, gosh, now I remember what it was like when I was brand new. Now I remember how overwhelmed I was. The new person now feels so connected with the experienced people because they know this is how you felt. This is where you were at. So you take and you immerse that relationship, intensify it so quickly that they're already feeling so much better connected and vulnerability to the organization. Those are just a couple tactics that I think are really, and I hope you got to try this, because you can see the room shift, because these experienced people are coming in and then the new person's intimidated. But when they start relating to, my first day, I didn't even know where the dang bathroom was. My first day, I was terrified to draw blood from this person where I came from, or I was terrified to clean a room with somebody in it because I came from a hotel or something like that. And then also those new people, and they feel like they're not alone, because nobody wants to be alone, and they get a sense of belonging. But they're also then much more common to ask that person's advice, because they know that person has been there.
That is awesome, Quint. That is solid gold right there. I think people are going to play that part over and over again. Quint, any final thoughts?
Be a get-to person. Just start today saying, I get to do this. I get to go to work. I get to take care of patients. I get to do this. I was talking in Gary, Indiana. Matt Doyle's the CEO of a Methodist, which is, a safety net type hospital. And, we started, like every CEO, and he's really, I like him a lot. He just said, hey, today, here's what we're doing today. And tonight I have to go to this thing. Have to go to this thing. And at the end of the day, he got up and said, let me tell you what I'm going to do tonight. I get to go to this thing. And the whole place erupted. And they erupted because it made sense. And he demonstrated a role model, him adjusting right off the bat. And when people say the word get to, it's magic. And until you start doing it, you won't know the impact. And when you do it, you say, well, that's pretty cool. I get to go grocery shopping today. Aren't I lucky that I have enough money to buy food? I get to go to church, or I get to go to work, or, I go to the physician. I've had health issues, and I say I get to have access to health care. That's pretty cool.
That is totally cool. And Quint, this morning, I told my wife, I get to interview Quint today because and I truly meant it. I have the honor and privilege. And Quint, just want to tell you, like one of the slides I use, I have a picture of downtown Pensacola with the Blue Angels flying over. And my question to the team is, or who I'm presenting to, does anybody know what town it is? Because, a lot of people aren't from Pensacola. And a while they'll kind of guess. And I use that to talk about, I've had the honor of working for Quint. But when you even look at the town of Pensacola, it is a different place. And especially because I know what it was like when you got there. And it's you and many other amazing people that you partnered with. But to me, it's a beautiful example of someone living their cause and purpose. I'm thinking you're a little bit past your 30s now, but you're still choosing to do this. You're still getting to do this.
And it's ironic today, and I know this will be played later, so today, it's a Friday. What's today's date? February what?
The 16th, I think.
Okay, if they go to the Wall Street Journal today, there's 3 sections of a Friday Wall Street Journal. The first one is always news. The second one is business and finance. And on Fridays, the third one is talking about cities, communities, homes. The front cover of the Wall Street Journal section today, in a big picture, and the headline is, when did Pensacola become so hip? And the whole entire Wall Street, there's like a huge article on how Pensacola has sort of become the hip place to be in the United States right now. So who would have thought that, Chris, that we'd be the cover of Wall Street Journal?
That is so cool, Quint. But I remember being that young guy and just going, gosh, could I ever live one day to impact where I live? Well, I love where I live in Western North Carolina. And while, we're not exactly where you were when you were in Pensacola, I think there's great things happening here. And I think the lesson is, no matter who's listening, basically taking what's in front of you, that I get the honor and privilege to be a part of this. You may never know this side of eternity, the impact that you're going to have. And just, Quint, I want to give you kudos. There's a lot of people and there's a lot of communities that are better because of the work that you do, and a whole lot of healthcare.
Well, thank you. We have a book, all money goes to build a brain. It's called The Building the Vibrant Community. They can buy it online. And it's basically how to take your community, usually your small mid-market communities, and make it more vibrant. And every dollar of that goes to research on how to build babies' brains.
Well, Quint, again, thank you. Well, at the end of each episode, we'll always share a quote and a visual, and we're actually calling it our brain bookmark. It's a thought prouder about the podcast, just to further your learning and thinking, and hopefully that it sticks like a brain bookmark or almost like a brain tattoo. To our listeners, be sure to subscribe to the Anatomy of Leadership so you don't miss an episode. Tell your friends and families about it. Also, if you'll tell them about the Anatomy of Leadership book, also check out Quint's books, Rewiring Excellence and The Human Margin. So thank you for listening to the Anatomy of Leadership, and here's our brain bookmark to close the show.
Are you a got-to person or a get-to person? Be a get-to person, by Quint Studer. We have to be careful that we don't take what is a relationship field and make it a transactional one, by Quint Studer.